Drew Chicone here. I'm taking over Costa Del Mar's Instagram story to answer your questions on paddleboard fly fishing. First question is, what makes fly fishing from a paddleboard so special? Well, for me, it's a couple of things. Ease and convenience, and the stealth ability of a paddleboard as opposed to a skiff, and also the ability to see. So when you're standing up and you're sight fishing, it's pivotal that you see those fish. If you're on a kayak or in a canoe and you're sitting down most of the time, you're gonna spook fish before you even get the opportunity to cast to them. The stealth factor, if you're fishing, skinny water like what we have back here, you're gonna spook fish with bow wakes, with motor noise. Even a trolling motor is gonna spook fish. And the ease and convenience, as opposed to like a skiff or, even like a ginu. I mean, I love fishing out of my ginu, but I can't push it in by myself and, be up and running in a couple of minutes. If I take my Dorado off the lift, it's an hour's worth of prep and setup and get it back on and cover it up. So just those factors alone are why I choose a paddleboard over any other, one-person vessel. Okay, next question is, what are the difficulties from fishing off a SUP? Well, the obvious one that most people think is, I'm not going to be stable enough, or I'm not going to have enough balance. You get what you pay for. These boards, the boat paddle boards, they're wider, they're made from a more durable coating. It's a ballistics grade coating, not like the old styrofoam board. So these are actually really stable. The inflatable boards are even a touch wider. So if you're fighting fish or you're not the most nimble person, I would suggest you start with one of these. But the other issues or stumbling blocks that people have when they get started is you're managing a lot of moving parts at once. Getting the board in place, getting to the fish, stabilizing, making a cast. The easiest thing you can do is try to break it down into smaller pieces. So for me, I get to a spot and I'll put an anchor down. Like you can see here, I leave this anchor next to my right foot. When I see fish, I'll lean down and set the anchor, get my rod ready before I take the shot. What are the different models of SUP? There's all kinds of models out there on the market today, different manufacturers. Your basics are inflatables versus your hardboards. Hardboards obviously are a little more durable. They have a more knife point to the bow, so they're going to cut through the water. They're going to track a little bit straighter. They're probably a little bit faster and easier to paddle. However, they're a little bit heavier and they're not quite as stable as an inflatable. The inflatables, they do have some issues with durability if you're really rough or taking them over oysters or decide to, bury a hook in one of them. But for me, I prefer the inflatable just because it affords me the ability to roll up, put it in a bag. I can take it out to Sanibel, put it in the trunk of the car. I can put it on the big boat and take it if we're going out to Cabbage Key or something for lunch. Also, if you're fighting fish, it's just a little bit more stable. It's a wider platform. So for old guys like me, I like the inflatable. What are the basics you need to get started? Obviously, you need a board, a paddle. If you're gonna spend a little extra, here's where I would do it. A carbon fiber paddle with a foam handle makes a big difference on fatigue. A way to stop yourself, an anchor, 25-pound mushroom anchor on a tether like this, or a stakeout pole. You just need to have the ability to pin yourself in one spot when you're casting to fish, or even more important, fighting a fish. Other than that, you're gonna need a life jacket to be legal and a good pair of sunglasses for seeing the fish and protecting your eyes from debris and hooks. Just gonna walk you through my setup. On this board, I have a tackle rack outfitted with a tackle web. Tackle web, basically just a pouch that I can put shoes or a fly box, my towel in there. Off the ear of this tackle rack, I put a cup holder, not only for frosty beverages, but also it helps to hold my paddle so it doesn't slide off if I need to set it down without bending all the way down to the board. I can put my phone in here as well if I need to, you know, if I want to run video, I just set it in the cup holder. When I'm fishing, I leave my paddle leaning like this up against my thigh. I know where it is, I can feel it. I don't have to take my eyes off the fish. And the same goes for the anchor. It's always touching my right foot. So I can reach down, lower it in the water if I need to slow down or stop to make a cast. Continuing on the setup here, when I'm paddling to a spot, I leave the rod loaded and ready to go. I've got as much line as I need stripped off the reel and stacked in reverse order so I can easily pick it up and make a quick cast. I like the shorter rod, one, because it fits better on the board. I don't have a lot hanging off the front, and it's easier to cast with and maneuver when you're fishing in tight water or really, you know, confined areas. Any beginner mistakes to avoid? You know, I think the biggest mistake for beginners is trying to do too much at once. There's a lot of moving parts between controlling the board, environmental factors, winds, tides, where the fish are going, trying to get a good cast. So any of those factors that you can remove or limit will really help you, especially when you actually do hook the fish. Trying to land it, that's a whole different animal from a paddleboard. So if you can get to where the fish are and get set up in stationary, anchor or stake pole the board, get your line set up for a good shot, you know, strip off 60, 70 feet of line, have that stacked up in reverse, have the fly in hand, and have the board stationary, you're going to get the best shot at the fish. And when the fish eats, you're going to be in control of the paddleboard already. So you can fight the fish and get it to the boat and keep it out of the bushes as efficiently as possible. I think that would be my biggest recommendation for beginners. Also, if you get uncomfortable, sit down. You know, if you start to lose your balance or, you know, the fish has kind of got you wrong-footed and you're starting to get tippy on the board, just sit down. Once you're in control, you can stand back up and fight the fish, but those would be my 2 tips for beginners. Favorite species to catch from a SUP? For me, there's nothing better than big snook. I love catching bonefish, you know, tailing redfish are fantastic, baby tarpon are a blast on a paddleboard, but nothing beats a 35-inch snook, you know, those big fish that are lurking around in the shadows and the mangroves, underneath docks. I love doing dock lights, you name it. Snook is what keeps me up at night. What are the top 3 flies that you like to use for that fish? Let me turn this camera around and I will show you. Okay, when it comes to big fish, I tend to throw big flies. So my go-to is this Tuscan bunny in dark colors, black, gray, purple. This moves a lot of water. The only issue with it is if it's really spooky, it tends to get saturated and it comes down pretty hard with a splat. So if that's the case, then I go to this, which is my 5-minute finger mullet. It's still a big fly. It moves a lot of water, but it's softer on the landing. If I'm fishing a lot of like stained water, mangrove roots, kind of creeks and things like that, I go with this GT pinfish. It's just real flashy, and it gets the attention when the fly isn't seen really well. I always have a couple of smaller flies like this contraband crab and swamp cabbage shrimp with me as well. This is kind of my go-to for redfish, sheep's head, and baby tarpon will eat these as well. Any tips on handling the fish and photography from the SUP? First and foremost, you got to get the fish under control. Then I tend to position the paddleboard where I want it for light and with the background and things like that, while at the same time keeping the fish underwater. So I tend to paddle with my right hand, hold the fish with the left in the water. Once I get that set up, then I'll get the camera ready. I use the iPhone a lot instead of a larger camera. I tend to do a release shot or video or a kind of a POV of its, point of view shot close up with the fish, just because I can keep it in the water. If you do want to take it out of the water and get yourself in the shot, you can use a GoPro or one of these mounts for your iPhone. This just holds it in place. You can put it on your head. They've got some that go with your chest, or on your chest rather, like this. They come with a remote and a little app that you can use to trigger the camera function on your phone. You can also use an Apple Watch to do that with a countdown timer. That's probably the easiest as far as getting yourself in the shot, but again, keeping the fish in the water is paramount, so I tend not to do those. There's just too much setup and time with the fish out of the water. So the tips I have would be take the fish out as little as possible and do as much prep as you can before trying to get the shot. What other gear and essentials do you bring with you on the board? Okay, let me flip this camera around and I'll show you what I bring with me in my bag. Bar none, my favorite bag for on the paddleboard. It's the Patagonia Stormfront Great Divider bag. It's a 29-liter bag. It's waterproof, got this clip on the front so you don't have to leave it zipped all the time. I add a carabiner to it just because it's easier for me to keep the straps together when I'm carrying it back and forth, and I can just kind of clip it up for a little bit extra security if I'm not zipping it. The top, I might put one of these little brushes in here so I can comb out my flies. I've got some sunscreen, maybe a few extra flies and a leader up top that I can get to pretty easily. Inside, I always keep a pair of scissors with me in case I have to trim or adjust a fly while I'm on the water. Also, I keep a pair of boots in here. For some reason, I have to get out and push the board. A little towel is key for wiping down after you catch a fish, or cleaning your glasses, or cleaning up any blood or anything off the board. My Van stalls, I don't go anywhere without these. These have seen some wear and tear, and they're amazing. They still cut fantastic. Got to have a good pair of pliers. I usually have a couple of drinks with me, just waters that I leave in the bag at all times. Lighter, my raincoat. This is the heavy-duty Patagonia raincoat that I don't go anywhere without. A buff, maybe a couple of snacks in case I get hungry out there. I use an awful lot of this adhesive tape for my fingers. You just tend to cut your fingers up, stripping with the grit that gets on the line, or if you fight a fish, you might cut your fingers some. So I use that. Some extra leader material. for building leaders while you're out there. Backup pair of Costas. I usually keep one in yellow lenses, the Sunrise Silver Mirror, and one in the amber color. All my flies I keep, the big flies anyways, in little zip bags like this. It just takes up less room, and it keeps them from getting all tore up in a box, crushed down. I usually have a couple extra liters in here. But that's pretty much about it. I got a flashlight in there, maybe some bug spray, but that's what I bring with me in my bag on a daily basis. It's not as hard as you'd think to get started. If you'd like some more info, head on over to my website or swipe up on the link below. There's a free ebook on my website that will talk you through setup, tips and tricks and things like that. You can always shoot me an email, drew@saltyflytying.com. Happy to help out with any other questions you may have.